So James got us these lunches from the university the other day, and we're going to be talking about the great course in that movie. So, there we go. I don't know which one you intended for me, so you choose.
It doesn't matter.
Well, I don't care, so you choose.
I think they're both the same. Yeah, this cookie was for me. Because you like the chocolate chip cookies.
Alright. So anyway, the movie was quite funny. We both thought whoever was directing the children should always direct children. They were that good at it. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some crude language. It might be hard for some people to watch 10-year-olds swearing and...
Well, some of the humor was based on that, but I think they could use the same basic principles to do stuff that was more PG or whatever.
Or they're supposed to be 11, I think. Were they supposed to be 11?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, 12 years old, something like that.
Something like that.
So, the principle's not so much to show kids and stuff that they don't know what is and they're asking questions, whatever. The thing is to kind of introduce them to whatever, and just have them. It doesn't have to be kind of risky or something like that. And kind of listen to what they're saying about it and things like that. Instead of, like, one of the key things is we watch some of the extra stuff, the stuff that's on the other disc or whatever.
Oh, we watched all of the
stuff.
So it says something about the movie.
Yeah.
And I watched it twice. James slept through it the first time, so.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with the show. It was just I was very tired, and I just finished eating and stuff like that. So I was saying, it's good acting, but it's basically good directing and good writing, right? Mm-hmm. And then one of the key things was one of these trailer features or whatever you want to call it. One of the directors was saying, we told them to do this. It was kind of like dealing with claymation figures. And I'm going, exactly. Because you don't want to deal with these little professional actors, that are used to using, like, polysyllabic words and all that sort of stuff. And they're so precocious. I think some people want to slap them. Not me, because it's not their fault, right? You might want to slap their parents.
Well, like the one character, they were very well cast. Yeah. The one little boy, Thor, was such a yellow.
Yeah, he was.
And so, anyway, but he was well cast as a yellow.
Yeah.
And too many times you have yellows cast in movies, yellow children, as others, and they cannot. They can do yellow. Yeah. That's what they can do, and so you cast them for that. So, and they did. In this movie, they did a great job. I identified more with the African American boy. Now, what was his name? I can't remember.
Kevin something Williams was his. It Keith?
I don't know.
Keith something Williams was his real name.
Well, one of the kids is Max, and one of them's Lucas, and I can't remember which was which for the other little boys.
You're talking about the characters?
The characters.
Okay, I think he was Lucas.
Okay. So Lucas, anyway, I identified more with him because he's very much a green. He's a good little boy, and he'd get... You could tell which one was the troublemaker. It was the yellow, as soon as the what do you call it? The drone gets confiscated by the neighbor girls, then he smashes the plant pot, and he's like, we're going to stage it like a break-in, and he's just causing more trouble, right? And he was the one that he wanted to play with it. It wasn't his toy. But he wanted control, right? So, and that's how it got confiscated in the first place, because he caused the trouble, and then he was going to cause more trouble for them because he's yellow. So, but the Lucas is such a good boy that he wanted to follow the rules, and he was very much like that, right? And that's how I was when I was about that age. I very much wanted to follow the rules. And so did my sister. We were very well trained that way. and so I was, at his age, I was a school crossing guard. I held the little stop sign, wore a vest. It made me feel really important. Like I was doing a good job to protect people. Now, I
Anyway,
realize that
it's rare for us to watch all the extra
Yeah.
features. Very rare. So I thought it was a pretty darn good movie. There are
Sure.
a couple of places
there's
where
a couple, like,
it
it's
was kind
not
of-
really believable
not really.
that the teenage girls are going to buy a $600 drone. I mean, I realize these guys are in a different income bracket than us, but I really don't think that. I mean, do teenagers of the wealthy have $600 kicking around and they just?
Probably 6,000.
Well, maybe they do. I
We
don't
don't
know.
understand the
We
wealthy,
can't
no.
understand that, so it just seems unrealistic to
That
us.
didn't strike me as terribly unrealistic, but there were
Okay.
things. Yeah.
And then the one thing, when I guess it's Max, who was trying to make his friends feel better, and he was saying, they think you're random, but I'm going to convince them that you're specific. And, or, once they get to know you, they'll see that, right? And the outtakes, the actor who played
Oh,
Max,
right.
he didn't know how to say specific.
Yeah.
He had a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And James said, well, they should have cut that out
Yeah.
because obviously, like, that's not appropriate language for his age if he's having trouble with it.
Yeah, it's appropriate
but
language for his
it was a
age to
funny
have them
joke.
using F words, because I was.
Yes.
I wasn't before and I wasn't after, really.
The
But-
first time I used a swear word was when I was 7 years old, and it was bugger.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't know what a bugger
No,
was.
no.
But I called a tree a bugger.
Okay. First time I used one inadvertently, I was just looking for all the rhymes going through the alphabet for duck. I didn't get too far because my older brother was listening. He was just waiting. And then he went running up to my parents. James said,
Yeah.
and he didn't say what I said. He just said, he said a bad word. It started with F or whatever. He thought he was going to get me in trouble. And I was trying to explain, like I was practically stuttering, that I didn't know what it meant. I was just looking for rhymes for duck. And luckily enough, my parents understood. But, yeah, I didn't appreciate that, what my older brother did. Yeah, it wasn't me. He should have told me, like, don't go any further or something like that, or just let it go through.
But no, I think
Just
the
looking to stir up
specific
trouble.
joke was worth keeping in because James and I have commented on how we can't stand that younger people are using the word random.
Well, they misuse it, but it's just one of those things. It's going to be part of the regular parlance now. It's changed, so it bugs me. But what the hey, I'm just showing that I'm old. So, linguists say that you just got to accept change. You don't prescribe it. You describe it. So, like it seems weird. I never thought about it, but a lot of girls nowadays talk like this with vocal fry, and it bothers some people. It just, I don't think about it, but one of the girls in the movie, or women, she's probably a woman, but playing a girl, she kind of spoke with some vocal fry like this. The thing that bothers me is I think it's basically I don't have enough confidence in myself that I actually let resonate and
That might
stuff
be
like
it.
that. So
I don't know, but
I speak with some
I really
vocal
enjoyed
fry.
the movie. I mean, it's meant for people who are parents of 10-year-old boys or something like that, or somebody who's older who can relate, right? It's not meant for 10-year-old boys to be watching it, really.
Probably not. But one of the things they said, they had an important point. They were saying, was it
That's
them
why
or
that
you?
specific joke was
You
in
were
there.
saying, or was it they that were saying you? you forget what you were like when you were that age.
Well, yeah, I was
And
saying
then
that
you gotta
people tend to lie to themselves
Yeah.
about who they are now, and then they definitely lie to themselves about who they were when they were kids, and so then they end up not really understanding what their children are like because they believe their own lies,
Yeah.
right? No.
It was funny, it was just like seeing myself when I was a
Sure.
kid, and
Me
I guess
too.
kids really haven't changed that much,
Yeah.
however much people might be
Lucas
motivated and
was
stuff like that.
was the male, darker pigmented version of Polly,
Yeah.
and I was scrawny, so he was not scrawny, but
He was very big in all sorts of dimensions.
yes,
So which one do you think that I identify with?
Max,
Yeah,
I know.
that's the way it kind of works.
You're bluer, I'm greener. Anyway, I'll go on about this Introduction to Infectious Diseases course by Barry C. Fox. And I think he did a great job. He has a different perspective on things than I have, but that's a good thing. It's a good thing to get different viewpoints on what's happening. And he really knows his stuff. So I really loved learning from him.
So you don't need a safe room to get away from a viewpoint that's different from yours.
I do not.
Yeah, I don't
I
either.
don't need
It's
a
kind of
safe
funny.
room.
I just
I like
don't
to
feel-
learn
yeah,
from other
I
people,
feel that
and
correct. Yeah.
so yes. Now I only started taking notes on lecture 6 because I copied some notes from the earlier lectures, and enough that I already knew the stuff that I didn't have to start actually writing until lecture 6. So, Antibiotics, a Modern Miracle Lost is lecture 6.
Yeah.
Antibiotics have been around since 1940s. Bacteria resistance in antibiotics resulted in 23,000 deaths and 2 million diseases per year in the U.S. Pseudomonas or aeruginosa produced a substance in the test tube known as piocyanase. Studies showed piocyanase killed dangerous bacteria. It was used as a topical skin antibiotic. Paul Ehrlich, 1854 to 1915, used Savarsen, an arsenic derivative. Boy, I'm having troubles this morning. To treat syphilis. It was toxic though. Lysozyme is a natural antibiotic in tears which cause bacteria to fall apart.
That's amazing.
Yes, I did not know that until this course, and I'm very glad to have learned it.
Yeah.
Penicillin fungus kills bacteria. Penicillin is a beta-lactam named after the ring structure, which I drew here. Beta-lactams bind to proteins on the cell wall surface of the bacteria and then interfere with bacteria enzyme involved with the cross-linkage along the outer layer of the bacterial cell wall. They weaken the structure like suspension bridges, which then leads to collapse. Gerhard Donag, 1895 to 1965. Protonsil streptococcal treatment. Sulfonamides disrupt the pathway that leads to the synthesis of DNA. Folic acid is a building block named for DNA synthesis, and it structurally resembles sulfonamides. These compete to acquire an enzyme, para-aminobenzoic acid, required for folate production and DNA synthesis. Bacillus brevis produced a compound that inhibited gram-positive bacteria. Gramicidin was too toxic when given orally, but used as skin antibiotic. Howard Walter Florey, 1898 to 1968, and Ernst Boris Chain, 1906 to 1979, worked with penicillin. Florey warned of misuse of penicillin would lead to resistance. Antibiotic resistance is a natural phenomenon. Streptomycin used in TB treatment and gram-negative bacteria infections. Streptomycin damaged kidneys. Neomycin was developed The mode of action inhibit protein synthesis. They bind to the ribosome of bacteria, which causes an inaccurate reading of the mRNA. So proteins are synthesized erroneously. Advanced aminoglycoside derivatives are still in use today. 1947, chloramphenicol was the first broad-spectrum antibiotic. It interrupts protein synthesis by binding with messenger RNA at ribosomes. Typhoid fever, go-to drug, but it had some issues. Aureomycin tetracycline has 4 circular rings, blocks action of transfer RNA at the ribosomal site of protein synthesis. We still use tetracyclines today, only 2 beta-lactam penicillins, only second to beta-lactam penicillins. Erythromycin has a similar mode of action as tetracycline. Cephalosporin was structurally similar to penicillins, disrupt bacteria cell wall, 2 decades to purify these for antibiotic use. Synthetic modification of the ring led to better activity. Methicillin, but bacteria altered their surface enzyme. 2 antibiotics combined. Trimethoprim, sulfamethoxazole, used for bladder infection and MRSA. Quinolones, broad spectrum. Nalidixic acid, introduced in the 1980s. These bind to the enzyme DNA gyrase. This enzyme is responsible for the unzipping of DNA during the reproduction of bacteria. Widespread use led to resistance of quinolone class. Quinolones are also exploited for food and growth of livestock animals. The resistance has transferred to humans. When bacteria divide, they duplicate DNA, protein, cell walls, and genetic mutations occur. Mutations can occur in genes within chromosomes or in extrachromosomal genes, also known as plasmids. Bacteria share resistance genes. 1. Enzyme inactivation. 2. Altered bacterial membrane target site. 3. Altered other target site, such as a ribosome. 4. Antibiotics. Efflux pumps. Resistant bacteria produce disruption in penicillin ring. Beta-lactamose can open beta-lactam ring of antibiotic. 1. Bacteria that can produce beta-lactase. 2. Altered bacteria membrane target site. Antibiotic binds to PBPs. Actually, I have pictures here. I'm not going to read this part because I can't. Just borrow it and look at the pictures too. Anyway, because it explains a lot and 1,000 words and all that, and I'm not going to provide them. So borrow the course. If a methyl group added to ribosome, macrolide unable to bind to ribosome, sometimes entire outer structure is altered. Cell membranes have porins which won't allow cephalospores to enter cells. Cephalosporin-resistant gonorrhea has been placed on the CDC list of urgent emerging bacterial resistance. Boy, that'd suck, eh? For people who get gonorrhea, to have a resistant form of gonorrhea. Boy. Some have multiple resistance mechanisms. New Delhi strain of E. coli is resistant and is slowly spreading around the world. Might not be able to treat your next UTI with antibiotics. Exciting.
Yeah.
Top 3 bacteria on the resistance hot list include Clostridium difficile, Neisseria, gonorrhea, and CRE. The development of new antibiotics has stalled over the past 2 decades.
Now what's that
The
about?
pharma industry faces disincentives to develop drugs that will only be taken for a short period of time versus things to treat chronic conditions. Since 1983, serious decline in antibiotics discovered. Respiratory ailments account for a majority of antibiotic use. They are prescribed 50% of the time, even though they don't work for respiratory ailments. Ear and sinus infection get better within 10 days, with or without antibiotics. Only 5% of sore throats caused by streptococcus that require antibiotics, so they should only be prescribed 5% of the time, not 50% of the time. 80% of antibiotic use is in livestock production, and 70% of this use is just to fatten the